The time zones to you, my dear friends. Welcome back to Sorry What. My name is Jason and I won't be keeping you for long, but please support the channel by liking the video and subscribing. It really helps me a lot. And now on to the story. I'm not a lawyer, so there are going to be inconsistencies. Don't worry about it, just enjoy the story. It's fiction, like Dracula, hopefully. I stood next to the white boardroom table. My wife Sharon sat opposite me. We both worked for the same food company. She was deputy director in charge of production, and I was the legal beagle. My job was to stop the company from getting into trouble. It wasn't a full-time job. I was just called in when Pooh Hatter was about to hit the rotating cooling device, plus a bit of preemptive work. The rest of the time I worked for Smith & Jones, a company of lawyers in town. I smiled at Sharon. I had picked a trend in the US, and as sure as runny dog sheep smells it would hit our small island at some time, so I wanted to be prepared. The CEO indicated for me to speak. It is something I had passed through him. We had discussed it and he thought it was a good idea. I'd been thinking about it for a while, but I had to move my plans up. Our group of companies are held in high esteem. We are a family company with family values, and with the economic downturn, our production runs of slightly less expensive food had garnered us a great following. I have noted across the US, and increasingly in the UK, that companies are enforcing a moral code of conduct. I picked up the remote control and pointed it at the large television screen and turned it on. I had done some research. There were headlines of a US company that had nearly gone broke because it found out that the CEO was carrying on with one of the director's wives, and there was a great backlash. I pulled up another one where the stocks fell a full 612% in a day, because another director took his company to a tribunal. All because he had had an affair on company premises with his married secretary. They were both immediately sacked. The company did not have a moral code of conduct in place, and therefore they could not be punished. They went to the tribunal and won. The company lost millions, and nearly went under. I have suggested to Sir David that we employ a simple moral code. He has agreed it will be an addendum to everybody's contract. Basically, if people are having a sexual liaison within the company with someone other than their spouse, there will be 2-week suspension without pay. They will have to explain the loss of earnings to their other half. If both of them are married, and we all know each other well enough to know who is married and who isn't, the same rules apply to both of them. The full details will be in the amendment. I looked at him, he nodded and he said, "Even the CEO." He carried on. "Nobody in this company should be above reproach. That includes me, my son, all of you, and everybody who works for you. Everybody will be contacted, and it will be explained to them." I looked around the room waiting to see if I was going to see any faces looking flushed. There wasn't any. That was good. Chris from packaging down the end of the table asked a question that had probably been playing on everybody's mind. I'm not, and I hasten to add, do not know of anybody who is currently having an affair between 2 members of staff, but what if they are? Sir David nodded to me. It's relatively simple. If they sign the document and continue to have an affair and they are caught, they will be asked to leave. If they do not leave of their own free will, they may find their employment somewhat more difficult. They may get transferred to prevent the affair continuing. If they're caught having an affair on any of our properties, they will be sacked. If they do not sign the document, and that is their right, let us say that will put doubts on their suitability for working for this company in the long term. With that, the meeting broke up. That was when I saw Sharon cast a smile at Brian, Sir David's son. Sir David was a nice man, a genuinely nice man. He had been knighted for his charitable works. He was so proud of that, and quite rightly so. He was a man that people, including myself, looked up to and admired. He had found a way of collecting food from supermarkets that was nearly out of date and redistributing it to the needy. Quite difficult because the rules about selling or providing food that is past its best buy or sell by date are difficult to overcome. The people getting this food didn't care. It also saved a lot of waste. He managed to convince other food manufacturers to do a similar thing. I suspected Brian had been making a play for Sharon for some time. Being the boss's son, he thought he had a bit of leeway. But I think that little speech by his father put the damper on that. That was my full intention, but I didn't think I was out of the woods yet. I think he had been making a discreet play for a lot of the ladies, since he got back from working at one of our other factories. He'd been moving around doing a couple of years in each place to work out how the business was managed. And now he was back at base. I was wary. Little rumors had reached me that he was being a bit naughty whilst he was away from home. His wife stayed in their house in our town, and he traveled weekly to the other outlying factories. I'd also had a few visits from some of the girls on the shop floor, asking me questions about what would happen if the boss's son made a pass at them, and they turned him down. They knew he was married, and in some cases so were they. They were worried about losing their jobs if they didn't respond to his flirting. Their words, not mine. I told them all they had to say was, "Mr. Davidson, that is inappropriate. Please do not do that again." And then report it to me and I will keep track of it and deal with it. Anonymously if they wished. Now Sharon has always thought she's smart, she is, and sometimes she's smarter than me, she doesn't think she is. She also thinks she's more devious than me, and again sometimes she is. Okay, that's what I let her think, but I'm still distrustful. In my legal business I've had to do things that are, shall we say, less than completely ethical, so I'm very good at covering my tracks. I contacted one of my people who did work for me on the quiet, and I managed to clone Sharon's phone. Sharon and I had been married for 7 years. We've known each other for 9. We met just after I left university working as a lolly pen pusher in the lawyer's office that I still worked for. She wanted some help over some death duties, and as it was a mundane task, I got it. She was very cute, I was taken by her as soon as we started to talk. I liked her short, efficient bobbed haircut, the cutest smile and bright blue eyes. She was smartly dressed. She excluded a small air of class. I was taken with her straight away. I thought she was out of my league. But I asked her out anyway and was surprised when she accepted. It turns out she had been a bit flighty in her younger days, but now she had settled down. Hey, I was the same when I was at university. After 2 years we were married, and we were happy. We had decided children weren't for us just yet. But Sharon loved children and was looking forward to being a mum in a few years' time, but for now we enjoyed the holidays, the smart cars. We had planned ahead, and in the house we bought we had already decided which room was going to be the nursery. It was a large room because twins run in her family, and she was hoping it would happen to us. It turns out the lawyers I worked for liked what I did. It appears I sailed a little close to the wind occasionally, but knew when to tack into wind or luff up and run with it. That was how I ended up working part-time for the same company she does. The lawyers rented me out on a sort of as-needed basis. It was all fine until Brian turned up. Yes, they did have a little fling before they both got married. Cute junior manager and the boss's son, it was always sort of going to happen. But I didn't hear that from them. They kept quiet about that. But there are plenty of sheepsters in any company. I could almost see why she'd taken up with me. I look a bit like Brian. Some people thought we were cousins. We both had the same build and height, even our hair was similar when I let mine grow long. At a distance we had often been mistaken for one another. But I'd seen her look at Brian and the way he returned the look, and that gave me little worries. Whilst I kept an eye out, I could see nothing wrong. It was just a little look thing, sometimes accompanied by a smile as if they were sharing a secret. But being a lawyer, I had heard all the stories of cheating wives and husbands, so I knew what to look for. I saw nothing, and hopefully the new moral code contract would stop anything happening that shouldn't. Some of her flightiness came back in the bedroom since Brian turned up. We were never shabby in bed together, but she took it back to our early days together. I kept an eye on her messages. There were a few texts from Brian, not many and nothing untoward. But then there were things like, "Your smile brightened my day." He was right, her smile did brighten everyone's day, but it was the 3 little crosses he put after it that bothered me. I couldn't let Sharon know I had seen that message. She replied, "Stop it," with a giggling emoji. He sent a winking emoji back. That was enough to send out warning signals to me. I would have to keep an eye on this. That night over dinner I almost gave myself away. I asked her, "You're spending a lot more time with Brian than you did John before him. I hope you're not getting too up close and comfortable with your old boyfriend. He is married, you know." She didn't hesitate. "Of course not, he's just a friend." "Well, just make sure it stays that way. You won't like the result if that friendship changes to something more." I don't think she noticed I called him her old boyfriend. I would have to be careful not to do that again. With that I got up and walked away, leaving her to clear the table, something we normally did together. I glanced back, she was just sat there with her mouth hanging open. When she came into the lounge after she'd cleared up, she looked a bit crestfallen. Like she was waiting for me to ask something like that, and she had a ready answer. But I had shown her I wasn't taken in. And her looking like that convinced me something had or was about to happen. She said, "You think you're smarter than me, don't you?" "Sometimes I am, and sometimes I'm not. We each have our own skills." I laughed at her, smiled and said, "Of course, there's one skill we enjoy together." With that we went upstairs early for the first time in a while. She had been working late, but that was only to be expected with the new production lines happening in Christmas just around the corner. It was a matter of getting the unit costs for each item of food at the correct level, so the company still made a profit. And it might be as simple as only putting 6 meatballs on a pizza instead of 8. I wasn't sure if it was the late working or something else, but our sex life fell off drastically. And I knew Brian was at work with her, that was normal. I wanted to squash anything before it started, so I tackled her. The opportunity arose when she came in late one night. She smelled a little of drink. When I questioned her, she said she and Brian had been for a quick drink after they finished work to discuss the next product they were going to produce. I didn't beat around the bush, I came straight out with it. You're spending a lot of time with Brian. Are you sure you're not having an affair? He has a wife and 2 kids, you know. That immediately put her hackles up. No, I'm not, how dare you? Are you sure? You're coming home later and you're always sliding up to Brian a lot. You know that moral conduct thing applies to him and you. She was still angry at me for suggesting it. Yes, of course I do, I wouldn't cheat on you. Mayhap, Milady protests too much. I still didn't tell her that I knew about them before. I looked at her, you're a young sexy lady, but none of it's been coming my way recently, so where are you getting it if you're not having an affair? That stunned her, she looked at me aghast. I'm not, I promise you I'm not. I'm working late and I can prove it. You can track my phone. The security people know where I am. The factory runs 24 hours a day, and you know I have to be there at times. You can check who's on site, everyone has to sign in and out. You can check who's there. It sounded like she was panicking. I tried to look like I was pondering on something, and I said to her, okay, but something's not right, something is going on. I need to think about this. That night I knew where my lovely young wife was getting her sex from. She struggled to walk in the morning. And I was pretty knackered too. A couple of days later at breakfast I got out a piece of paper. So you tell me you're not having an affair? No, I'm not. She had a worried look on her face at where this was going. You're not planning to have an affair? I love you, don't be so bloody ridiculous. Of course not. She sounded quite angry now. I was almost relieved. Then you won't mind signing this, will you? I pushed a piece of paper across to her. It was a postnuptial agreement. I was expecting a little bit of an argument, but she knew how my mind worked. She read it. It was very simple. If either one of us engaged in a sexual activity with any other person apart from the undersigned, the perpetrator would leave the house and take 1/8 of the savings and half the current bank account and their clothes. Underneath that was a list of sexual activities which included fornication with, masturbation of another person, whether male or female, oral sex of any kind. No ducking, no wanking or no blue jobs or kitty licking of any other person. She looked at me and said, this wouldn't hold up in court. She seemed to forget I was a lawyer. We're not in court, this is between you and me, and by the way it is so simple. Yes it will, I am a lawyer, don't forget. I made it purposely simple. I was tempted to add that she does food, I do law. And yes, it would hold up in court once she knowingly signed it. She didn't hesitate, she could see I had signed it, so she signed it. That was when I told her I knew her and Brian before. And when I asked her about it, she said, it was all a long time ago, don't worry sweetheart, you're my only man now. So why not tell me about it? I asked her. It was a long time ago, before we even met. It's no secret. It just didn't come up. That's all. As a bit of a jibe I said to her. So now if you duck Brian, you lose your house, your job and your car, plus about 250 grand give or take. Now that caught her out, that made her shake her head, she paled a little for a short while. Now was the time to keep an eye on what was happening. I checked on her phone daily. It wasn't long after that I saw the text she sent to Brian. Pete knows something is planned. He made me sign a postnup. He wouldn't do that unless he suspected something. We are going to have to call it off. Brian replied, he can't, this is foolproof. It is so simple, so even if we get caught it will look like it's him. Nobody will believe him, and if he says anything else he will look like the idiot he is. Don't you run him down, I love him. This is just a one-off, just like those old days when we used to sneak around. As I said once. You just want to get something over on him, don't you? And you're using me to do it. Brian texted. Might be, she replied. He put a smiling emoji on. Don't worry, I'm not complaining. So, it was soon, the only thing coming up was the company Halloween party. They were so smug they could get away with whatever it was they were planning. There was nothing else in the text apart from meet you so and so, it was always in the building and the places, they were never alone. It will be an office or the cafeteria, but they were sitting talking together, which is not unusual. She was in charge of production, and he was in charge of the factory. Then on Friday afternoon I got the text from Sharon's phone. I've got the costumes. There was nothing more than that. We were due to go to the factory Halloween party that Saturday. The factory would be very busy at Christmas making Christmas foods, so Halloween was the best time for a company get-together. It took a bit of sorting out, shutting the factory down for a day, but I think the maintenance people got a lot of stuff done. We had done this before, and I generally picked my own costume, but this year Sharon picked it. It was normally quite a fun event. Management generally hired their costumes, but the lads and lasses from the shop floor tended to make their own. Some of those were better. I got a little worried when I saw mine. It was a cowboy outfit, a hat, shirt, waistcoat, chaps and a gun in a holster. I found out the gun was a water pistol. She even got cowboy boots. That was okay, but what worried me was it included a Lone Ranger style mask and a full beard. You almost wouldn't be able to tell who I was. I will probably have to lift the beard up to drink beer. A straw might be in order. We got dressed for the party. The hairs started standing on the back of my neck when Sharon did something strange. She tucked a pink handkerchief in the breast pocket of the waistcoat, and she messed around with my hat. She was wearing a PVC Catwoman catsuit that I hadn't seen before, complete with whiskers, ear headband, the most fantastic cat eye makeup and tail. We were sometimes a little risque in the bedroom. The zip went from neck all the way around to the small of her back, that is where the tail was stuck in. I did draw the line at her wearing her thigh-length boots and leather waspy. That would have been too many secrets out in the open. It was all finished off with a small black handbag on a golden chain, the sort of thing that women keep their phones and a little makeup in. I tried to get a little naughty. We had time for a quick one. She was as sexy as hell and I wanted some of that. She laughed and told me to wait till we got back home. Anyway, with my senses all alert off, we went to the hotel where the company had hired the ballroom and somewhere to store coats. Lo and behold, when I got there, Brian was wearing exactly the same outfit as me. We all had a bloody good laugh about it. How we were both dressed the same and anyone could get the two of us mixed up. It didn't take me long to work out what they were planning. I could see their game straight away. What bothered me was how would she know who was who? If you didn't have a suspicious nature and didn't think there was something untoward going on, it'll be a good laugh. Then I noticed a more worrying fact. He also had a handkerchief in his top pocket, but his was red. He also had a hat on the same as mine. It looked a bit odd. Then I realized the feather in his hat was on the opposite side to mine. Now I could see how their plan was going to work. It didn't take me long to think of a way around it, but I would need a bit of luck. Sharon stayed close to me and I didn't even see her glance across Brian at all. There were lots of laughs and jokes saying that we were both dressed the same and you could get us mixed up. Sharon arranged to have photographs taken in the middle of this. I got someone to take photographs using my phone. We even had photographs taken of us with our beards and masks off. I insisted on that photo, just so people could tell who was who. It was a bit of a giggle. It was about mid-evening and Brian headed off to the toilet. I didn't need to go, I hadn't drunk much. But I followed him in and we had a bit of a laugh and a joke in there. I pointed out his handkerchief was all messed up and I straightened it for him. He gave me a strange grin. I even straightened his hair as he had his hat off. I managed to get away before he did, and as I left the toilet, I saw Sharon. I nodded to her and discreetly pointed to a room at the back where all the coats were stored. She headed that way and so did I. She got there first, opened the door and went in. The lights weren't on, but there was enough light to see. I followed her in, and as I did so I turned the key in the lock. "I've been waiting for this," she said as she sunk to her knees and undid the zip of my trousers, pulled my clock out and took it into her mouth. I muttered phone through the beard. I don't think she heard me. I managed to reach her bag, get her phone out and start recording. Hopefully there would be enough light. It took a lot of concentration, which was probably a good thing, otherwise I would have come very quickly. She was very good at blue jobs. If anyone caught us, it would look like Sharon giving her husband a blue job. Naughty but not wrong. I didn't want to come in her mouth, so I lifted her up and pushed her back until her backside met the table with the coats on. I pushed her back and undid the zip from her back. I saw the tail fall off. Now I propped her phone up so it would video everything. She had trimmed her kitty hair. I like that, but she doesn't do it for me. I managed to move around so I could get a good picture of me doing it. I was using my fingers on her. As I said, it would look like her and her husband doing naughties. She had a little oath, then she grabbed me by the shoulders and said, "Come on Brian, duck me." I tried not to disappoint and I slipped in hard. Oh my god Brian, that's so much bigger than Pete's. I rammed into her hard. She came like a train. It didn't take us long to finish. She looked at me but didn't smile. Surely, she should be happy now she had achieved her aim. Now to the next part of my plan. We left the room separately. Sharon went first. She said she had better go and find Pete before he became suspicious. Too late. I picked something up off the floor and put it in my pocket. I tucked my handkerchief further down, so it was out of sight. I moved the feather in my hat to the other side. I left the room and headed out to the ballroom. Looking across the room I saw Sharon standing by Brian. He had his arm around her waist. She probably thought it was me. I woke up and said out loud in a poor cowboy accent, "Get your hands off my gal, or go for your gun." I took up the gunslinger stance that I had seen on telly. Go for your gun. We were only a few feet apart. I laughed, my voice was muffled by the beard. Brian laughed back and took up the stance and yelled draw. We did, he was faster, but I was more accurate. He got soaked, I had red wine in my water pistol. And I got him in the heart. I used the waistcoat top pocket as an aiming point. I hit it. We laughed again. Everybody laughed. I walked up to him, grabbed him and spun around so his hat came off. I kept spinning round. That could confuse everyone. When we stopped I took his waistcoat off, it was wet with red wine. I whipped off Brian's mask and beard and then mine. I think everybody including Sharon was confused. At least that's what I was hoping for. After that excitement things started to slow down. Now that we were revealed Sharon stayed close to me and put her arm around mine all the time. She often looked up to me and smiled. I wondered what she was smiling about. Probably that she was more devious than me and had got one over on me. Well, we will see Monday morning. Things started to die down and it was time we went home. We hadn't drunk much as Sharon would have to go into work tomorrow around midday to make sure the ovens were on and everything was ready to restart production on the Christmas lines. We had ordered a taxi and the taxi driver's eyes were out on stalks when Sharon walked out of the hotel. Which wasn't bad, the taxi driver was a lady. When we got home, she leaned into me and whispered, "God, I'm randy as hell, now let's go to bed." I didn't know to be disappointed in my previous performance or be grateful. When we got to a few steps up the stairs I asked her where her tail was. I don't think she knew it was missing. She told me she didn't know. She surmised it dropped out when she went to the loo. I pointed out to her that we didn't drink that much. I was with her most of the night, and she never went to the loo. A worried look passed across her face, which turned into a smile. Then she held her hand out to me and said, "Come on, we have things to do." It didn't take me long. I followed that cute bum in the PVC catsuit up the stairs. She walked in first, I grabbed her and spun around, got hold of the zip at the top of the suit, took it all the way down from neck to her backside. Oh my god, that's great. I put my fingers down there and started to play just how she liked it. I had to hold her up, her legs were about to buckle. I pulled back and looked at her. "Trim your kitty hair then, that's nice. It gets caught in the zip, and I know you like it, so just for you, my lover. Do you want to taste down there?" Yuck. Not just yet, maybe in a minute. Not a ducking cat in hell's chance. I pushed her back on the bed, she laid there with her legs open. "Lick me, I love it when you lick me." "No time for that, you're so ducking sexy I'm going to come, and I don't want to waste it. It's going up you kitty." I went into her hard and fast, this was no love making, this is pure ducking. Her legs went round my back as I pummeled into her. She scratched my back with her heels. She screamed as she came. When we finished she looked at me. "If that's what I get, I'm going to have to wear this suit again." That was probably the best ducking I've ever had. I helped her undress, she was all sticky and sweaty wearing that suit all night. She managed a quick shower and collapsed in bed next to me. I got up early in the morning and got her phone and sent the video that was recorded last night to my phone. She had to go to work, but we had breakfast together. As we sat there it was all very nice, she looked at me, smiled and held my hand. She couldn't stop touching me, perhaps I made an impression last night after we got home. Whilst she was at work I edited all the photographs, the video and the audio tracks. There were several pictures on social media which I downloaded. It would make for an interesting chat on Monday morning. She got in the evening and bought a takeaway. Okay, it was the pizzas they were making at work, but never mind. It had 10 meatballs on. She cracked a bottle of wine. She was very amorous. I didn't know whether I impressed her last night or she was happy that she got something over me. I wasn't sure, but I took full advantage of it. She even let me have her bum hole, and that was normally only reserved for my birthday. When we went to sleep she laid there smiling, she looked happy. Monday morning I was waiting at the front door when Sir David arrived. Whenever I did that he knew it was bad news. As we walked to his office I said to him, "I'm sorry sir, I don't think this can get much worse. This has far-reaching consequences." As we walked towards his office he asked me if he needed his secretary to take notes. I suggested that we have a chat between the two of us to start with, and he can take it from there. But unfortunately, it concerned his son. He seemed to suck in a little as I said that. I didn't want to hurt this man. He was nice, he was a lovely man, but I'm afraid it was inevitable. I plugged the drive into the big TV screen in his office, and I put up a set of pictures. He had already seen that Brian and I had turned up in the same costume. That was no surprise to him. I showed him the big picture showing the different colored handkerchiefs, and where the feathers were in the hats. Even the picture with us lifting out beards and masks so it could be seen who each of us was. But until I pointed them out he hadn't noticed the differences. I felt sad about this next bit. I looked at him and said, "I'm sorry Sir David. I showed him the picture of Sharon having sex in the room with what looks like her husband, until I pointed out the handkerchief and the hat. And this had been a deliberate ploy by both of them to cuckold me and to go against his wishes. He sat there stunned. Are you sure? Could it be a mistake? Are you sure it wasn't you? Of course not. You would not miss doing something like that. I apologized and played the video of Sharon having sex and then fast-forwarded so he could hear the audio clip. The poor man sat there and cried. I felt really, really bad. But in my view, something that had to be done. This could probably be handled discreetly between us. If Brian had been successful with one of the other married women on the shop floor, all hell could have broken loose. So in my view, as painful as it was, this was probably the best way. Sir David gathered himself together. He asked his secretary to fetch Brian and Sharon, and it was urgent. He asked me to put the picture up on when we were lifting our beards and masks to see who we were. They walked in with obvious trepidation, and then when they looked at the screen, I think Sharon realized. Brian was completely confused. Sir David repeated almost everything I said, pointing out the hats and the handkerchiefs. He asked me to go to the scene in the room with the coats. There were tears in his eyes, but he asked me to pause. He pointed out the hat, the handkerchief that Brian was wearing, and that this was obviously a pre-planned exercise, and that if they had been caught, everybody would think it was me. Brian just stood there with his mouth wide open. Sharon was crying. She managed to get out that they couldn't be sacked. It was in a hotel. It wasn't on a company site. I pointed out that we rented the whole ballroom, including where the coats were, therefore it was classed as a company site. We owned that property for the duration that we paid money for it. Sir David agreed with me. Sharon collapsed on the floor crying. Nobody moved to help her. Brian just stood there with his jaw wide open, shaking his head. Oh God, that's not me. Honest Dad, that's not me. I didn't do that. He kept on rambling when Sir David said, You and Sharon planned that between you, didn't you? That was when Brian stopped, looked at his dad and said, Yes, but it never happened. That's not me. If you have the red handkerchief and the feather on the right side of your hat, you caught. He paused for a while, then he said in a quiet tone, Get out, a pair of you. Go home whilst I sort this mess out. Brian walked out on his own. Sir David helped Sharon up into the door. That was when Sir David's secretary took over and helped Sharon out. I don't know where she went. Sir David looked at me. What do we do? That is entirely up to you, sir, but I shall be divorcing Sharon. He seemed to pull himself together. He told me he had heard rumors of what Brian was doing whilst away, which is partly why he agreed to the moral clause contract, hoping it would stop him. But he had found no evidence either. And nobody had come forward to complain. He said he would sack anybody violating the moral clause, so they both have to go, but as discreetly as possible. There would be rumors, but that was unavoidable. I agreed with him that enough rumors would get around, but it would reinforce his statement of no cheating and no extramarital affairs. Nobody asked how I got the video. I asked if I could go home. I had things to sort out. Sir David just nodded. I intended to go home to sort Sharon out and come back to help this man. I phoned her parents on my way home. I told them what happened and asked them to collect her, as she no longer had a car. Her father didn't like me. I was a lawyer. His first wife had taken him to the cleaners. She was the one that cheated on him, and a shark lawyer took him for everything he could. The poor man worked incredibly hard to get back on his feet. I greatly admired him, although he didn't like me. They had a set of keys. I told them to let themselves in when they got there. I got home and Sharon was sitting at the kitchen table. I barely got in when she rushed up to me and tried to grab hold of me. I pushed her back. How could you do that to me? It was Brian's doing. I thought I was ducking you, she said. I got my phone out and started to play back so she could hear herself say, Come on Brian, duck me. She collapsed back on the chair. She looked defeated. I heard the front door open, and her father and stepmother came in and stood in the hallway. I had waited for this. How could you be such a conniving witch? To trick me, you purposely ordered 2 of the same costumes, so you could make everyone think that you were having sex with me if you got caught. You then had sex with him, saying, Oh my God, you're so much bigger than Pete. I could see her father and stepmother out of the corner of my eye. I didn't let up. And then when we came home, you tried to get me to eat his spunk out of your dirty count. There was a retching sound as Sharon's father threw up all over the Axminster carpet. They helped her out. I said I would deliver her clothing tomorrow. As they left, I gave her stepmother a copy of the postnuptial agreement. I saw the family lawyer in my company later that day. That was his side of the business. I let him sort it out. I went back to see Sir David. He was holding up very well. I knocked on his door and he asked me to come in. He was on the phone and it was Brian. I could hear he was still complaining that it wasn't him. Sir David asked him to prove it because all the evidence and the handkerchief and the words that Sharon had said proved it was him. With that he hung up. The next couple of weeks were frantic. Just before Christmas, losing the production manager and the factory manager in one go is not good. Rumors were flying round like sheep from a runaway muck spreader. Most of them were surprisingly accurate. My divorce went through quite painlessly. Brian's was a different matter. He fought and he argued, but to no avail. His wife used our family lawyer, who I informed of the rumors about Brian playing away from home whilst he was working away. He investigated officially, and a couple of women from the other factories admitted to having liaisons with Brian. One was married and narrowly missed a divorce, the other was single. As soon as that came out, he stopped fighting. His wife's lawyers took Brian for everything they could. I contacted Sharon just after the divorce was final, and asked if she would like to go for a coffee. We went to the hotel where the company held the Halloween party. We could see the room where she had her assignation with Brian. I pointed it out. That made her start to tear up. We made small talk. She had a job as a deputy production manager at a bread factory in the next town. It was boring, the same product day after day, there was no challenge. Brian had ended up divorced and was now working in a small factory in Bolimina in a subsidiary of the main company. Please, just tell me why. I asked after the coffee and cakes I ordered had been served to us. She looked at me with sad eyes. I just wanted to get something over you, to know I was as smart as you, just the once. But sometimes you are smarter than me. You're a lawyer, I was just a food production manager. It's not as important, or as smart. The only thing I have left is that I got one over on you, but even that is empty because I lost my marriage. I took a long drink of my coffee. Oh, I wouldn't gloat too much about getting one over on me. I swapped handkerchiefs and hats when I was in the toilet with Brian. I knew what you were doing. It was me all along. So you still only had my clock up your count since we've been together. Bigger I don't think so, just the same bloody size. You're not as bloody smart as you thought you are. And now you have a crappy job paying crappy money, no savings, no car and no house, so you have to live with your parents. It's some I feel sorry for. Her jaw fell open. I don't believe you, she said. That was when I dropped the cattail on the table. But if I didn't duck Brian, why did you divorce me? Why would I stay married to someone who would go to those lengths just to get one over on the person they say they love? If it had been a stupid drunken mistake of ducking Brian, I just might have let you get away with it. But to plan, lie and then cheat just to get one over on me is too much. And that's a pity because I still love you. I just can't live with a conniving witch like you. I didn't mention about her planning to get ducked by some old boyfriend. That didn't seem important. I stood up, picked up both slices of cake and walked out. That's it for today, friends. If you enjoyed today's story, leave a like and comment before you leave. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button so you don't miss any video. Goodbye for now and I'll see you in the next video.